Kia ora koutou. I'm Shanti Morgan, Group Manager Environmental Science. Today I'll be hosting this workshop on our biosecurity responsibilities as a regional council and the review of our regional pest management plan. To start us off, I'll just go through a quick karakia. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. He huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Uie, pākia. All right, so just the purpose of this workshop is to give our councillors an understanding of the responsibilities under the Biosecurity Act as a regional council, to understand our current regional pest management plan and the programs within it, and understand the process for its review, which we are currently under. I have two staff here to help me out today. I've got Emily Rutherford-Jones here, who is our biosecurity manager, so she's technical expertise in all things pest management. And then we have Marianne as well, regional planner. So she's putting the pen to paper and we'll be writing the review of the regional pest management plan. All right, get us started. I'll just share my screen. Go. All right, so basically this presentation will just give you an overview of our regional pest management plan review, which is scheduled to take about 2 years. It's pretty standard in a planning cycle like this, a little bit shorter than some of our other regional plans, but it's still quite a lengthy process as there's quite a lot of legal responsibilities under it. What I'll cover today is the New Zealand biosecurity system, regional biosecurity functions, our RPMP, the programs that underpin it, how we achieve these, an overview of RPMP reviews and our processes, a real overview of the changes that we're looking to put into the plan, and then just some of the questions that we're looking at asking our community. So as I go through each slide, I'll just invite questions from councillors, and please just put your hand up if you've got any at this point. Colin.
And just for those online, Shanti, would you explain what an RPMP is?
Sure. So yeah, catch me out with any acronyms, please. Regional Pest Management Plan. Right, so this slide here just covers the biosecurity system. There's sort of 4 tiers to the system in our country. The top one is the one that most people will be quite familiar with, which is central government, run by primarily the Ministry for Primary Industries. And this really is your border control, so the people that stop us bringing things into the country, but they also work to protect the country from national sort of declared pests and stopping things from becoming established. You might have heard of the hornets up north, so that's an NPI project because they're trying to eradicate it from the entire country. Other things that you might be familiar with, fruit fly. We get quite a lot of fruit fly incursions, particularly in Northland and Auckland. So NPI will often lead those. Foot and mouth is another obvious one. Regional councils act as a support, but we're not the lead agency and we don't fund that work. Moving down to the second tier is regional councils. So this is when pests have been established in the country and NPI say, look, we're not trying to eradicate it from the country anymore. It becomes a regional responsibility. This is where our regional pest management plans come in, which are a legal responsibility. Under these plans, we are required to do pest control and surveillance, compliance and enforcement. So that is a requirement. We have responsibilities under the Biosecurity Act that allow us to enforce the rules, and we can infringe as well if needed. A big part of what we do is supporting the community. So our regional pest management plan should reflect the community values, including things like economic importance to the region. So for us, farming, primary industry is obviously important. We don't have a lot of pests that are widespread across the country. NPI are no longer managing these, so we need to go, hey, look, we want to keep these out of our region, or if they do come into our region, we might want to eradicate them because they will severely impact potentially the social, cultural, economic values of the West Coast. Moving down is landowners, industry and community. So these are the people that need to follow the rules and the responsibilities under the RPMP. They do the on-the-ground work. There's a lot of local and industry initiatives. So you think your Paparoa Wildlife Trust or Te Kinga, predator-free southwestland, all these groups doing really great things to protect the West Coast from pests that are potentially widespread. This is all underpinned by partnerships, funding, and of course legislation. Biosecurity Act 1993 is the key one. Something important to note is that Act is currently under review, like a lot of acts at the moment. We are expecting that those changes will be good. They'll allow enforcement to be a little bit easier and infringement, so you wouldn't necessarily have to go through the courts. You could just do quicker infringement. And the review process to be a little bit straightforward. At the moment, we have to do quite complex cost-benefit analyses for each species, but that might become a little bit easier as those changes come in. Any questions on the system?
Could I just make a quick comment there, councillors? Over the years, there's always been a tension around new incursions with the old MAP and now MPI, where the government agency says, look, we're trying to eradicate, but we're starting to lose the battle. We might have to surrender on this one and hand the matter as regional councils to manage. Now, that has generated in the past a lot of tension between local government and central government, because local government says, no, you need to try harder, right? And you need to put some more money into it, because the cost of not eradicating is, it starts to get exponential, if this thing takes hold. So just really calling out that in that interface between central government responsibility and local government responsibility, often there's a big tension that plays out when they're starting to lose that battle around eradication. Yeah, and that gets quite political often. Yeah, thanks.
Are there any other questions on the system?
Well, they're trying to get the regional council to control something that the central government hadn't been able to do.
Yeah, so it's all about the cost and the benefits, isn't it? So they're saying basically we've got to protect the country from all these things that are coming in. We can't do everything. So they have to draw the line somewhere. But regions might decide, yeah, they've said they can't get it removed from the country, but from the West Coast, this is really important. And I should have mentioned as well that collaboration between other regional councils is really important in this space. So if Canterbury has something or Otago, we can, have a bit of a partnership with them to make sure that that doesn't get here. So sort of pathway management. And MPI does support some of our programs or things that are here, like the Clean Check Dry program that help fund that. So they don't totally step away, but they definitely aren't the lead of those programs.
Because like the wallaby, there's one thing that we could probably keep out of here if we keep on to it.
The what, Andy?
The wallabies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So MPI do put quite a bit of funding towards wilding pines and wallabies. That's an example of a pest that is still present here, but MPI still has a bit of a commitment to managing.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised here that, deer, field deer, pigs and goats, to me, are going to be passed on to a regional council and our ratepayers, because DOC are abdicating their responsibility to government. Now, I wouldn't have a bar of that.
No, so to get this, we'll get to that stage.
I'm very surprised that this is even in here, because the first I knew about it was when I read it. We're going to no surprises for me. Well, the surprise that I'll be given, I'll be voting against this all the way through if we are going to be now the de facto doctors in control of all these plants that they cannot control. And, I hope John Cowan's watching on the screen, because down in southwestern we hear cattle on the Harts River. Doc, more or less made him put a fence to stop his cattle going to the Dock estate. Well, it's a bit rich for government to come and say, it's on us. The hell it is. And, I'm not talking about it.
Yeah,
If
sure.
that's on our final survey, I'll be voting against it all the way through. We're gone by lunchtime according to government, so we don't know government any favours. The last election we've already had. Same for the district councils. And they're trying to pass it because it's too hard for them. To us, our ratepayers now getting screwed. Cost of living. How can we justify charging them to get rid of a government agency's problem when we have to fix it? It's never happened in the past. No problem with plants. We've always done that.
Yeah.
But the biggest problem in the country is going to be feral animals. And this coming out of left field to me.
So just to clarify, Doc did not ask us to do this.
Oh, no, they wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they don't want to talk to anyone about it.
We are meeting with the Conservation Board and we'll be meeting with Doc as well and the National Ungulate Program. I will get to the survey and why we're asking the questions we're asking at some point, but I just wanted to clarify that it's not because Doc have asked us to do that.
And Shanti, I think, Peter, the purpose of this survey, or the purpose of this workshop is to give our community an opportunity to have a say on what they think. And we as councillors representing our community have to listen to our community. So if our community says, yes, we want to control ungulates, then we as councillors have a responsibility to act on what our community is telling us.
Well, it shouldn't have been there. It's no surprises policy. We've got a surprise. I don't accept that as council.
Look, Peter, I've been aware, I'm not sure whether Councillor Wine has, Councillor Wine, but I certainly have been aware, and I'm pretty certain we have discussed previously the fact that the ungulate problem on the West Coast is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. Recognised by the Department of Conservation, and now we, as part of our community, as one of the leaders in our community, are also starting to have a look at this issue and obviously workshop with our community and see what our community wants to do about this issue.
I'd just like to state my position along the lines with Peter. I'm not interested in any of this. 85% of the West Coast is not rated. Most of these pests are coming from government land, and it's a bit tough for the government to now say that our ratepayers have to start paying for this problem. Poor old pensioner ratepayers on the West Coast are funding this issue. Now, I'm just not interested in any of it. Same as a lot of the environmental monitoring that we do on dockland and the lakes. We shouldn't be doing that at no cost. If that work is to be done, the government has to send the money down here and we'll do it on their behalf. But no money should come from the ratepayers for any of this. I'm just not interested. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just comment? So, look, I'm a little surprised myself because I thought we'd actually talked about this a number of times, formally and informally at this table, but put that aside. I'll just peer back what's been talked about here. So firstly, we're well aware that our communities, particularly in South Westland, are saying that there is a substantial increase in ungulates that is actually starting to cause an economic detriment onto their properties with pasture and things like that. And they're reporting substantial increases in ungulate numbers. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if there's any actual data and things that's going to bear that out, but that's what they're saying, and I've got no doubt about their views on that and the accuracy of their observations. So that's number one. Our communities are talking about this. We now have an option through the fact that we've statutorily got to revise our plan, regional pest management plan, whether we want to do anything or nothing about this. But this is the key issue I want to say here. It may not, we need to put up and canvass and hear all the options. Only one option is that you actually do a regional rate. Okay, there are other options that other regions do, including, and I'll get Shanti to talk about this, a thing called good neighbour rules with the Department of Conservation that's got to pay their share and those sorts of things. But this is a conversation that we need to have with our communities about how they want to do this and how, if we're going to do anything, it would be paid for. And central to that, 100%, is what is the government's role here, and are they going to play a part, including financially, and how can we actually have a good conversation with the government and our communities about that. But we lead this conversation. It's the regional council. It is not saying that we want to regionally rate and have to rate all the way. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, what are all the options we've got here? Let's have a conversation. Shanti, is there
Yeah.
anything?
No, that definitely sums it up. Like I will get into that level of detail when I talk about the review, but at this stage, exactly what Colin said, it's really early engagement. What does our community actually think? Our key function as a regional council is regional leadership, and there's lots of really beneficial things about putting pests in a regional pest management plan that don't necessarily mean anyone has to pay for it. It can be a signal to the government that this is a priority for our region and that they need to actually do something about it. It can support us in funding applications and getting partnership agreements to do things about pests on the West Coast. So other regions like Auckland and Northland get significant amount of money for ungulate control from the government. We don't get any. They both have ungulates listed in their plan. So that's worth considering there.
I think we should just let Shanti keep going through the slides, and some of this will come up more in the material.
And I've put a note, Peter, just to make sure my communication is better with you, because I had totally overlooked that. So my apologies. I should have had a chat earlier. So I just wanted to. Oh no, I've got a few spots ahead.
Andy had his hand up.
Oh sure, that's right. Okay.
We, as I said before, we got to treat them as a resource and commercialise it, and we won't have a problem. It's only in the last 30 years that it's got out of hand, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once we started treating them as pests, and it's just the numbers just building and building, and as long as we're treating them as pests, we're never going to control them. We're never going to.
That's what Shanti's wants. I think that's what Shanti's going to come up with, exploring options.
So at this
Heaps
stage,
of options,
yeah,
but,
we're really not at that level of detail yet. We're really just going, what does our community think about certain pest animals, and do they want us to look at them more?
So I think it's really important you just let Shanti go through the workshop and let's learn more about what's proposed.
As long as that's one question that's put to the community.
Yeah, that's it. Let's
Yeah.
see what happens.
Cool. All right, so regional council biosecurity functions, planning and strategy, we've already talked a bit about that, program delivery, making sure that we can do the things we said we're going to do or have mechanisms to find a way to get them done. We talked about rules, compliance and enforcement, and engagement and partnerships. Won't go into that too much detail for the purpose of time. So what do we have to do? There's a national national direction, which basically says the things that we need to do in this space. We have to undertake cost benefit analyses. We have to identify beneficiaries and exacerbators. So Peter, your point there that, department might be an exacerbator of the ungulate program, that would be part of that identification process if we chose to go down that path. We have to follow statutory consultation, and we have to review our plan every 10 years or sooner if required. Moving into implementation, we have to undertake our pest control programs, monitor compliance, undertake enforcement, and recover costs. So that can be through general rates, targeted rates, or infringements through compliance. And there's benefits and issues with all of those options. We have to appoint inspectors. Our regional council has myself, Emily, and our other biosecurity officer, Taylor, appointed as officers under the Biosecurity Act, which allows us to issue directions, infringement notices, into land and collect evidence if we need to. We have to provide monitoring and reporting, so we're required to do an operating plan every year and an annual report as well. And we have to maintain transparency and funding. This is really important. You can't just put a bunch of stuff in the plan and go, look at this great stuff we're going to do because the community wants us to. We have to prove that we can achieve that with the money that we've got. It can be through partnerships, but we'd have to prove to audit that those partnerships are possible through funding agreements and things like that. We're not required to eradicate all pests. If we decide that ungulates are not an issue in our region that the regional council wants to manage, we absolutely do not have to do it if we do not include them in our RPMP. We don't have to act outside of the RPMP. So the RPMP is very important because it highlights the key areas of focus that we want to do for this region, and when we've got a small ratepayer base that needs to be really well considered and achievable. Our current RPMP has 42 species. This includes aquatic and land, but it is pest plants only. We don't currently recognise any pest animals in our pest management plan. We're the only regional council in the country not to do so. So every other regional council identifies and manages at least some animal species. This can be birds, down to reptiles. You've got Auckland that does things with, red-eared slider turtles. And it's really reflective of what the community sees as the most important thing for their region. Ours is written primarily on an enforcement basis with minimal rules associated with service delivery. So there's benefits to enforcement. It means we don't have to increase the general rate. That's great. But it does mean that we then have to put these enforcement notices on people and say, hey, you've got this pest species on your land, you need to control it. The problems associated with that are the landowner isn't necessarily a specialist. They don't necessarily have the resources to do it, and it might be a regional problem. So if you had 10 houses in Runanga that had a pest species, we just went there and gave them letters and say, you have to control this or we'll fine you. That's not that supportive of an approach. And if you say, actually, these 10 houses, we could come in here, do it for you, do a really minimal regional rate. Cost of rate pays 10 cents potentially across 33,000 people to manage these 10 properties. And it has a huge benefit to the region because those pests don't spread. Our specialists know exactly what to do and how to do it. So service delivery is really great in some areas. It's not appropriate in other areas like gorse, where it really is widespread. It's already here. It just doesn't make sense for us to go and help people with gorse control because it doesn't really have a regional benefit.
Shanti, can I just so that in many other regional pest management plans, the enforcement option is always there, but many other plans also call out and have in their education, having limited amount of support for communities just to go in and do if it's low level stuff, those sorts of things. However, you're going to go down that track and put that as options that the staff can do in your regional plan rather than just the enforcement option, then that speaks to resourcing and a budget to do that. Otherwise, you're not actually staying true to what you're putting in your plan there. And look, there are, and I'm not saying we should be in this game at all, but to the extent other regional councils, especially the bigger ones, have big teams doing this stuff. Right now, we're never going to get there because of our low rating base. But I just wonder and put it to you to think about whether there is a degree of more formality and some level of resource around that education, information, and sort of upfront help that we might want to actually do, but understand the consequences of that from a rating perspective. Thanks.
And just picking up on what Daryl said, there are a lot of community organisations out there that are already undertaking on a voluntary basis pest control, whether it be rats, stoats, any form of musculid, etc. And we can with not too much resource, we can actually multiply that benefit by having in our regional plan assisting those community-based organisations to undertake the voluntary work that they are undertaking. So we multiply the effect at reduced cost to the ratepayers, but just have the resource to support those community organisations.
Right, so just carry on here. So the review that we're doing is required to reflect current community values and regional pest issues, which change over time. And the first stage of the review, which we're doing now, is just gathering information. We've got nothing written down. This is a process that we follow so that when our planners have done all the work, we don't need to redo it because we've got a pretty good idea of what the community want, of what councillors want, and what our stakeholders want, and what we can achieve. So once we get to that formal consultation process, relatively easy. We don't expect to go to the Environment Court and have any issues there. We've got 5 primary programs. This is consistent across the country, all the way from exclusion, which basically means it's not known to be present, but we really want to make sure it doesn't get here. Eradication, progressive containment, sustained control, and then site-led. So those sustained control and site-led are quite widespread, but our community has said, hey, this is really important, like ragwort or gorse. And our rules there generally tend to be more that good neighbour rule, which I'll go into a bit later, which Daryl talked about, and that's supporting landowners that put effort into their own property. They're investing into their property. We protect that investment by saying, hey, your neighbour has to also do a bit of work here. And we do that through rules. To achieve these programs, we've got 4 main sort of areas of work. We do surveillance. So this is really important. We've got to know what's in our region to be able to control it effectively. Our teams go out and they do all sorts of things. Education can also be a form of surveillance where we just put things out and require people to come back and tell us if they've got pest plants. We've seen a huge increase of people calling us up and sending us emails about pests lately. This is mainly due to our increased education, which is great. So we go out there, put newspaper articles, do things on Facebook. We've done public presentations, and now we're seeing better understanding of the community values of pests. I think in the past, potentially, they haven't fully understood the regional council's function of biosecurity. And as that increases, we're getting a lot more people asking us to do things within our RPMP. Pest control, we do go out there and do service delivery, and this is mainly in those eradication species. So where they're confined and we think there's regional value in doing that work, like I explained before, then we'll go in there and manage the pest on landowners' behalf. And then we've got compliance, and we do compliance as well to make sure that we are protecting the values of the West Coast, and where potentially it's too expensive for us to do the pest control ourselves. Historically, compliance, I've just said, it comes with a lot of community noise. If you receive a call, it's likely to be because someone's received an inspection notice or a notice of direction to control something. So as councillors, for you to consider, if we have a high compliance-based RPMP, you will expect people to be not that happy about it or not feel particularly supported. If we went the other way and went for a high level of service delivery, you can also have people not feeling happy about their rate money going into pest control, but it generally comes with more support from what I see in other regions, that service delivery style. RPMP review, so the process. Investigate, we've completed this technical work. We've done a lot of this with other regional councils, particularly Environment Canterbury. We've only got 3 staff. I think they've got about 60. So we use their staff to do a lot of our literature reviews, data collection, modelling. They've done climate analysis of a lot of the species, and they've done it South Island wide, so we can just use that data, which has been awesome. Discuss. So we've drafted a discussion document for you to consider, which I'll bring to the EMC meeting today for potential adoption. This councillor workshop that we're doing now, we've got an engagement plan, which I provided at the last EMC. And then we move into early engagement. So we've got particular meetings with groups, Federated Farmers, Deer Stalkers, Department of Conservation, the Conservation Board, predator-free groups across the region. And then we'll also put it out to general community feedback as well through a survey on our website. We then have to analyse. We take all that information in and we bring that back to councillors and go, hey, look, this is what the community thinks. Based on that analysis, this is sort of the direction we're going. And at that point, we'll ask you if it's appropriate for us to keep doing the work in that area based on our early engagement. We have to then do sort of cost benefit analysis as cost allocation and look deeper into programs. So, okay, the community said they're really interested in us doing Japanese knotweed, but that's going to cost $50,000 a year. How do we fund that? And then we bring you options associated with that funding mechanism. We then move into a proposed plan, and then we do formal consultation. So at that point, that is a requirement under the Biosecurity Act. It'll be formal submissions. We really hope that we've got it right. We don't have to make a lot of changes. We're still open to changes. We can still take things out. Move to decide and adopt, and then any appeals under the Environment Court. So the last RPMP I was involved in was Auckland, and we got a lot of appeals around the inclusion of cats from a lot of cat lobby groups. So we are, in our discussion document, we've got all this interest in cats so that we're really good understanding to see what the West Coast community thinks about feral cat management. And again, ungulates. So those things that are a little bit more likely, there's big sort of emotions associated with the inclusion of those pests in the plan. We then have that plan as operative if we get through those appeals. It's important to note that we can have part of the plan operative and just anything that's getting appealed, we can't have that part of the plan operative at that point. And then we can implement. So by review, it's legally required. If we don't review, we can't maintain our enforcement powers. Means that if someone says, no, you can't come on my property and manage this pest, then we can't use the plan to actually do that. So it's really important that we keep those powers. We ensure cost allocation remains defensible. We respond to emerging pests and risks. We're quite often getting new incursions of things, and we need to make sure that we're reviewing that and that we can have rules associated with new pests to get things done that happen. Testing effectiveness, aligning with national and interregional directions. So big movements like Predator-Free New Zealand, does our plan actually align with that or work with that national goal, which can open us up to partnership opportunities and funding as well. Governance and reputational protection shows that the regional councillors are actually taking on their function and managing to the legal requirements of the regional council. So moving into our review, so it will cover the additions to our plan, proposed additions at this point, really open to changes. So we're just putting things out based on what we've heard from the community. So we have touch points with the community and they're sort of saying things to us through our catchment groups, our predator-free groups. And so we've gathered that information, aligned it with our neighbouring regions and gone, look, this is what we're thinking. What do you think? But they are quite open questions. We're also saying anything else you think we've missed. So I've just said that feedback will likely result in change to our proposal. Yes.
How much say do we have? Because I reckon the pest management should be taken out of Doc's hands.
Sorry, what was the question?
I reckon our pest management,
Yeah.
like Doc are in charge of it,
Mhm.
or I reckon it needs taken out of their hands.
Talking about pest animals?
Yeah,
So DOC are not in charge of pest management. They're only in charge of pest control on their land. Once it exits the DOC estate, so that becomes a regional council function or a landowner responsibility. The only one that's a little bit more complicated than that is ungulates because of the Wild Animal Control Act, which I'll get into.
but because they're responsible for patrolling it on the Doc estate.
Yeah.
That's where our biggest problems come from. And they're not doing a very good job of it. So they need it taken out of their hands, I reckon.
Well, I think, Andy, probably a better approach is to work with the department in terms of improving the control of pest species. And there is, like Darryl and I met with the department or our department personnel recently in an informal basis to discuss ways that the two entities could work better together. So I think it's more a case of improving control by working collaboratively, and I would see that as a way forward, which we need to do. I mean, the department recognises the problem, and like for us, it is a resource issue. For the department, it's a resource issue. So it's identifying what our community wants us to do as a regional council, and us as councillors represent our community, so we've got to listen to it.
And this is an influence opportunity as well. So if you sort of, I mean, the DOC do a pretty good job of the National Pest Control Program, but our people on the West Coast may say, look, they're doing it here and here, and that just doesn't make sense because we need it done here. There is the opportunity to go, hey, this is a site-led priority under the Regional Pest Management Plan that could influence DOC to target their funding slightly differently, to partner with us as opposed to having individual programs run by individual people. We can sort of have a bit more of a collaborative joint up approach, and I know they're really open to that.
But I've had two people say to me, and wasn't recently, one fella experienced possum hunter, he went into the Arthur's Pass DOC office and said, have you got a possum block that I could go and do for you? No more or less told him bugger off, weren't interested. Another fella the stoats were getting his chops, so he went into the dock office in Hokitika and asked them for some stoat tracks. No, not interested. You know, those sort of people would have a big influence on that.
So a lot of regional councils will provide sort of control tools to landowners, private landowners and people that want to do a good job. And that's through that education sort of side of things, enabling people to do work on their own land, which comes at a pretty low price, that has a huge benefit. So that's definitely something we.
You're getting your labour for nothing.
Yeah, through the chair,
They weren't interested.
just the point I was going to make too, that if you can involve the community, that's an untapped, relatively cheap resource that could actually, do a huge amount of work for you, and often in an area that's really a hotspot too. And so I think we need to explore involving the community much more vigorously.
Yeah, we do.
And Andy, just to balance your experience and your experience is your experience. Now, I've worked with a small trust for well over 20 years, and we have worked very closely with the department in terms of managing predator control of the local penguin colony here along the coast here. And I'd have to say the department has been very, very supportive and very helpful in terms of providing us with advice and assistance in terms of that program. So, experience differs with different people, and sometimes it's an individual person problem rather than a department.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but there's a big resource of people out there that will do things. And even like when we get our possums done on the farm, fellas come around with traps or just possum, for the possums, tops and that. But they don't have anything for the rats. And they'll say, oh, the bloody rats are eating all the bloody poison. Well, surely give them some rat poison, get them spread that around as they go, and then we'd be curing the problem.
So I think we're going to come back.
Yeah, we're just on the matter of time, got 20 minutes left. So potential additions to the plan, I've got those listed there. We've got a few exclusion species that we've identified as quite important to keep out of the region, but again, open to changes, and then site-led species. We're thinking at this point, our thoughts would be that if we had site-led species, there would be a provision in the regional pest management plan to create a site. So as opposed to defining sites in the original plan, which some regional pest management plans do, we would say you have to meet these requirements for a site to be created. And that enables more flexibility in the 10 years, should there be changes in the community where they all of a sudden really want to do possum control here. They just need to make sure that they fill out a process. We don't have to review the whole plan again to get that added. I just mentioned that eradication is very difficult and costly for pest animals at a regional scale. At this stage, we're not thinking that that is a possibility. It's worth noting that Auckland has quite a few of these species as eradication for their region, and some of those big regions have that as well, in line with the predator-free movement. Good neighbour rules. So Daryl mentioned this earlier. So good neighbour rules require landowners to manage pests on their property to stop them from spreading and causing unreasonable costs to neighbours with clean or managed land, ensuring shared responsibility for pest control. The idea of this is it helps support our community with their efforts in achieving management goals, potentially impacting primary production and the natural environment to safeguard economic growth in the region. Good neighbour rules is the only rule that we can enforce on the Department of Conservation under the plan. So if we wanted to make sure that the department were doing things, we would have to add a good neighbour rule, and that's the same with NZTA. There is the caveat there with ungulate species, which it basically is managed through the Wild Animal Control Act, and so we can't really use the GNR there.
Really important for eradication projects as well. There's a massive gain there to be made for those.
Predator-free Southwestland, things like that. We need to look at these groups that are pouring a lot of money into the coast, into protecting things which actually impact the tourism and economic potential of the region as well. How do we help them out at a low ratepayer cost? Education programs, advocacy, but also just by going just identifying things in the plan and supporting them to achieve their goals. Had some really good conversations with predator-free Southers, and they're basically saying, look, we've got the money, but we need your support to try and get the community on board and to try and in these really small areas where someone's just saying you cannot come on our land, really impacts their program because of the amount of boundary associated with their control area. It's really causing incursions into their predator-free zones. So I think with our review, we need to think of ways that we are supporting people, but really considering a lower cost. So this proposal isn't looking at huge rate increases for everyone, but it's how do we support them and get the highest amount of value for our region. Ungulates. So I thought it was worth just talking about the Wild Animal Control Act. This is designed to control introduced ungulates. There's a list there of what that includes. So hooved animals are ungulates. Those wild animals are deer, wild pigs, goats, tahr, chamois. DOC has the primary responsibility for control, especially on public conservation land. The importance there is that we don't have full jurisdiction over these animals everywhere. Councils can include these species in an RPMP if they cause adverse effects on environment, economy, and community values, where regional action will improve outcomes accompanied with compared with individuals acting alone. We cannot override the powers given to DOC under the WAC. So the RPMP rules must avoid conflicting with hunting rights or DOC management. So at this point, if we are to include ungulates in the plan, we need to work really closely with DOC, and it needs to be a partnership approach. So when we have our workshop with DOC on the RPMP review, we're focusing a lot on this. What might this look like? Other regions have ungulates in their RPMPs, so Auckland and Northland both do. Any others? Southland. So there are some that are looking at it. A lot of them manage ungulates under a biosecurity strategy, which means there are no rules. In a sort of regional sector, we are looking at how we manage this. It's quite a complicated space. We are seeing ungulates spread, and if they are not added into an RPMP, we don't have any rules or enforcement, and so we can't support our community to get these things done. So we are still working at this, but at this point we're just going, what does the community think? And then once we know what the community thinks, we can think about options of where to go from there.
For the workshop with the department, sorry if you can't hear me properly, can we get the manager of the program to come and present to us? He presented to the conservation board 2 weeks ago, and it was really incredible. The difference, obviously, everyone's going to agree the current model of what is being done isn't necessarily being successful, but a mixed approach that they're doing in other places as pilot programs and things definitely could work here.
Yes, yeah.
Can't remember his name, sorry.
Predator-free South Westland have also offered to chat with you guys. Is there any interest in that?
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful.
They have a lot of interest in this review and supporting their goals. So they're really keen for you to understand what they've achieved there for the community.
Just a quick comment from me. Look, I think what we're saying here, we're at the start of this conversation. We're not halfway through or at the end, we're at the start, and this workshop is the start. I think, Shanti, you've put out your council to join staff in some of the meetings, is that right?
So any meeting that's not operational focused with the public,
yeah. So councillors will be invited to some of those meetings coming up. But the last thing I really want to say is, look, it is in the statutory timeframe. You know, we have to review our plan, and so it's the right time to start asking these questions, particularly around the ungulates. But the last comment I want to say here is, certainly not in the last 3 years, but look, I'll look to other councils have been here for longer, but when was the last time, and are we overdue for having a proper conversation with our communities, but with the Department of Conservation at a senior, not at a ranger level, you know, when you're front up at the visitor centre or something like that, but at a senior level, not just with the regional director, but with senior directors and potentially deputy director generals or director generals from Wellington, let alone conservation ministers. Because that's the level that this conversation needs to be taken to ultimately, I think, and that's your job, at that very senior political level, because we're not going to have the right conversation by talking to the community rangers here. That's not the level we need to talk to. Thanks.
Thank you, Shandy. Andy?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like for the farming, like the levy on a every animal processed is $36 there. Quite a portion of that goes to TV3
Mhm.
and also your milk.
Imagine if we could
Dairy
keep
farm.
that levy.
Well, it's going somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you, Shandy. Just,
Yeah.
conscious of the time.
Yes, thanks, Colin. So this is basically straight from the discussion document, which will be available on our website from today. And there's questions there as well, which will be available through an online survey. Encourage councillors to fill that out themselves, or just I can collect separate feedback. We will be bringing a paper to EMC today as well on this. So we're just saying, do you support the inclusion? And if so, we've given a few options of what that might look like: status quo, non-regulatory, management areas, which would be a cost to ratepayers, or rules to support control by landowners and community groups, or other. What else do you think might work? Just a note there as well, saying the council's likely role is not to fund widespread culling, but to provide a framework that supports coordinated management across boundaries, protects existing investment by landowners, enables access to national funding streams, and clarifies responsibilities. That's sort of what we're thinking. It's not looking at a huge ratepayer program. Predator-free. Obviously, there's a big movement for predator-free. Our current RPMP doesn't reflect that movement. Considerations here: land dominates. You've already picked that up and highlighted that as something that we should consider, which we are. There are strong community-led projects with significant predator-free progress that we need to consider. Access to controlling pests on private land can hinder progress of these projects, and it can cost the projects quite a lot of money due to boundary incursion. We have limited mapping of biodiversity areas on private land. A lot of other regional councils have quite sophisticated mapping on this sort of thing, so that does impact our ability to prioritise where we might want to do this work. Don't think that's a huge issue for us here if we put those provisions in the plan that allow flexibility around sites. A lot of other councils identify sites based on mapping, whereas we could have different criteria based on community values and effort. The RPMP inclusions would focus on protecting places where people are investing in predator control. So if someone's going, I'm going to put $10,000 here, we go, hey, we should help those people out a little bit. You know, it's potentially going to cost ratepayers very low amount of money, and they get that $10,000 benefit. So that's just what we're asking there around predator-free priorities. So again, do you support adding these animals in? And again, the same sort of thing. What do you believe the best method to manage these would be? Pest plants. Slightly less controversial, but we've still got one in there that might be a bit spicy. We've got willows. So obviously willows are a species that can be used for benefit of farmers, but it is also known as a pest. Campus is one that we get a lot of people calling up about. We've got two species on the coast, white and purple. We're doing pretty well with white. We're not doing so well with purple. So we're looking at changing the management approach to those. And knotweed. So I've just said a threat to infrastructure and built assets there. It basically is a species that can form dense dams, spread easily, and can damage infrastructure. This is the one that I've talked about where you can't get insurance on your property in England if you've got this species on your land because of the damage that it does to pipes. You'll see it growing out of all of our stock banks in grey all along the cycle trail. There's a few properties in Runanga which it just completely replaces grass. It's just a big bush of knotweed, and actually the density under the ground is about 4 times what you see above the ground in terms of the root system. Really significant pest, really hard and expensive to control. So the reason that we're asking the things we're asking in here is because they're high impact. You know, we're not asking about every change. We're asking about the changes that we think impact people and that we think that they should pay attention to make sure that we've got it right. Yes,
Is it possible to eradicate that snotweed?
possible if we have enough money. I don't think with our ratepayer base that it's not something that I would suggest we would do. It'd probably be the only thing we could afford to do if we decided to do that. But it is potentially possible to contain it to certain areas, which is something that we might look at. We might be able to eradicate it from small pockets. Do you want to talk about distribution, where it is?
Yeah, knotweed is one that's sort of important on that national scale as well. All our neighbours have it as either eradication or exclusions based on how bad it can be. In the West Coast, it's pretty widespread around Greymouth and northern Buller, but it's not south of Whakataka, and yeah, sort of patchy around the place.
So we might,
How does it spread?
Spreads by fragment, so
Wind or?
fragment. So mowers, people moving gravel around the place. We don't believe it is seeding on the coast. I think it's sterile. It does flower, but yeah, mostly fragment and people.
so the cycle trail, the building of the cycle trail, you can see the spread of it along there. Quite often when they do anything like stop banks as well, if they're using a digger and then they build a stop bank, you'll see it all along the stop bank. So that's where the education comes in, pathway management, cleaning your gear, things like that. People just aren't aware that it's an issue. Working with contractors so that they know where those bits are. All of that takes time, and it's just understanding if this is a priority for councillors in our community that we focus the office times on that certain thing. Yeah.
Varroa, is that why?
No, it's not on our list.
No, we haven't got any. We just got some enemies at this stage.
It's a parasite, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's not included on
Can be, but we haven't considered it, but we're open to feedback. Generally, if there's no effective management techniques, then we wouldn't be adding it in the plan. You've got to think, what are you achieving by adding it into the plan?
No, that's, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you could, I don't know enough about it, but we could look into it. Auckland has things like Cody dieback. So, and they manage that through pathway control.
When do we call it, when it's not economically viable to control something? Or just for our small funding, we can't afford to control, but it's still probably economical to do it. Well, the pink pamphlets now, what are we going to do?
So our proposal here, what do you think we should do about purple pampas? We sort of think eradication is unlikely. We would say we'd probably remove it from the plan as a species that we just can't afford to manage anymore, because we've got things like knotweed, which would have far more significant impacts across the region.
Peter, and then we're going to leave it at that because we're running out of time.
This is my last slide.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment before we close. There's been comment here around the table, like if a community gets $10,000 to do a certain thing somewhere and the ratepayers can chip in. Renee always used an example of 10 cents per ratepayer to get rid of a problem they may have in Renanga. The cumulative cost is the one that would break the camel's back. Camel's legs aren't made of steel, and the ratepayer is that camel. It's all right saying 10 cents here, 10 cents there.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the cumulative cost.
Yeah.
That will collapse the ratepayers' financial viability.
Yeah.
Because they're getting hammered now. And if you read the room being the West Coast, I know what the answer will be when people say, should we take over Dot's role? I won't have to mention it. Well, I know what it'll be.
It is just important though that we note that DOC aren't going to do anything about pest plants on private land.
I'm not talking about that. You know what I'm talking about.
Animals. Okay. Yeah.
All right, Shandy.
So yeah, process now. We will put this on for a paper actually going to EMC, which basically asks for approval to get this out to the community and to start consulting on it. But yeah, I guess I've got time for 5 minutes worth of questions at this point in general.
Well, we put some of these out in sport shops.
Can do, yeah. Yeah, if you've got any recommendations, or I can give you printed out versions of the submission document feedback form and things like that. Really happy to do that.
No, I think Andy's is a good one because hunters and whatnot going into
Yeah.
sport shops,
It's a good idea.
et cetera, et cetera.
Hunting, fishing shops.
Another example of what Shani's talking about, like I have hunters approach me who have issues about access, getting access to Dock Estate through farmland to actually hunt. So there's an opportunity for collaboration between the department, the landowner, and the regional council and the Deerstalkers Association to improve the relationship between hunters and farmers in terms of improving access to improve hunting opportunity as part of the strategy in terms of dealing with that, etc.
Just one on that, it's recently become a problem because it used to be free access where hunters would do their bit, and that's stewardship land. Now it's gone to iwi. All these roads that people used to go and do their bit to keep pests under control, they're all gated off. No one does. They're just blooming with feral pests. So there's a responsibility there for iwi now. They have got stewardship land.
Again, collaboration.
Just a couple of stats been out recently we should consider. Our population on the coast is falling, and we've got the oldest percentage of elderly people in this region of all of New Zealand. So we've got an aging and falling population. So it's going to be, it'll fall onto pensioners. A lot of these costs. Thank you.
Maybe to count that, there are a rising number of younger generation who are concerned about pest issues in the environment, and they are becoming quite active, and they are the ones who will carry this forward. Not our generation. Principally, it'll be the next generation, the generation behind it, who will help carry this forward and are active in that pest control space.
No, Colin. The young ones are departing. They're not interested.
The ones that stay, I hope they got deep pockets.
Yeah. Look, I spoke to my grandson. What are you going to do? He said, I'm going to get a trade. I'm going to Aussie for the big money. That's what the young ones think. They're not worried about pest plants around here, Colin.
But it's not all young ones, yeah.
But
anyway.
Yeah, okay. We'll argue.
All right.
And you've got to be able to get a gun license.
Take you to the deer camp.
So thanks, Shanti. Thank you very